Alright, response video, I suppose, to Hofla Day, but I really don't want to. So I'll just maybe make it a more general conversation. That's not quite right. Ugh. Sorry, positioning the camera is part of the art here. And I'm failing. So anyway, so he's called this thing universal value, murder okay, foundational rights. There's nothing in the philosophy, first off, that would say murder okay for any other purpose than because there was a reason to do it, like in war or any other thing. The rapist is heading for the woman with the butcher knife, whatever the scenario is. Somebody's threatening to do harm to something or do something bad, and you stop them. So again, you want to call that murder, then go ahead. I think it's a silly play on semantics. It's totally unintelligent in terms of having conversation. Clearly, you don't call war murder. Clearly, you don't call preventing criminals from perpetrating a crime murder. You don't call self-defense murder. So. Again, a silly rationalization. There would be nothing in my philosophy that says you kill something because it's not a threat. Something non-threatening is, you're allowed to kill it. There's nothing in my philosophy that says that, or anything I've articulated, so you're just lying. But that's your standard, I'm afraid. So, look, I gave you this clear little thought experiment. It wasn't really a bear in the bear trap. I was using a generic form of life, but clearly I think I did indicate it was sort of humanoid. But regardless, you just missed the point as always. I'm saying there's a rational way to look at things and an irrational way to look at things. You're saying that it's irrational to look at them in anything but a selfish way. So all children are just possessions. If it's not your possession, it's not a child, it doesn't deserve anything. It doesn't have attributes and qualities in and of itself that earn it a certain respect. It only gets respect if it's your child and you love it. That's basically what you're telling me. You're telling me that's the reasonable way to look at things. You don't look at them based on their qualities and their constituents. You look at them based on your attachments, your motivations, your needs. So again, you just broke the whole thought experiment by creating some sort of empathy nonsense. Emotionalizing the intelligence once again. The only emotionalizing that the intelligence has is an awareness of how bad the pain is. That's it. That's the extent of its empathetic understanding, is that it has been given a taste of the suffering. It has found it to be repugnant, and it is logically deduced repugnantness is a bad thing and it should be eliminated. Again, this logic goes right back to these simple arguments about you're saying that we should think subjectively. I'm saying that that is obviously not how we should think. We should think objectively. We should see things for what they are, not what we wish them to be, or what we think them to be, or what we feel them to be. Again, a child is a child is a child. The your part is preposterously irrelevant. And logically, rationally, it only has subjective meaning or importance. I'm not saying those things aren't real. I'm not saying that people can be anything other than emotional animals when it comes to certain things, but I'm just saying if you're going to be a philosopher, yeah, you have to be able to distinguish between psychology and philosophy, and I don't think you're describing reality when you use the subjective perspective as authoritative. It is understood as being non-authoritative, as being suspect always, and likely rife with bigotry and bias. So I use another way to metaphor this. I have theorized, I have made videos pointing out that we're of two minds. One mind creates our sensations, one mind reacts to the sensations and tries to find solutions. So we basically have the capacity to do a kind of pure logic. Our brain permits it. We can do mathematics reliably, we can do a lot of things reliably because our brain is capable of being somewhat detached. And so I'm basically arguing that just take that brain and slice it off, and put it over there, put it somewhere else. detach it from your own feelings and emotions, and just have it see yourself as what you are, just one among many, and evaluate circumstances without that bias. I mean, is that complicated? You could do the trolley car analogy or metaphor, or thought experiment, and you could just say the one person is, say, your brother or your sister. So you have a choice to allow 4 people to be killed or your brother or sister to be killed. I think logically and rationally you can understand that it might be good for that circumstance if you forgot they were your brother or forgot they were your sister. But if you did forget, your judgment would probably be saner and more rational than if you don't forget. That you would make a fairer decision if you didn't have that subjective influence and that personal interest. So our selfishness is nothing to admire. It's nothing to iconize as some sort of source of knowledge or understanding. It's an impediment to good judgment. It's an impediment to rationality and productivity and efficiency and all of those things. It just gets in the way. And I think it's just ludicrous for you to argue to me that somehow it's rational to embrace emotionalism. I think that's just nonsense. I've never argued in my videos for empathy or compassion. I'm arguing that it's a rational deduction. And it is. It's rational to deduce that harm, suffering, pain is bad. It doesn't matter what brain is experiencing it. It's bad in and of itself. Again, I could understand, let's say, a serial killer, somebody who's done terrible, malicious, horrible things, tortured and killed sensitive little creatures. And there would be a visceral, personal desire to see them suffer. It would be gratifying and comforting to see them get what they deserve, so to speak. But rationally you would know if there was no deterrent effect, if it would make the world not a better place, if it would not improve any future circumstance, you could rationally know there would be no point in it, that it wouldn't serve any interest, and that could temper and ease your need for revenge, because you would understand it's just going to be one more victim. It's just going to be more pain paid for this travesty, this mistake that should never happened, kind of thing. So you're just adding destruction and damage, and there'd be no rational point in doing that. So you can understand the logic, and your brain will enforce and reinforce the idea in your consciousness that the real win is not to create more pain, is not to poke out another eye if it's unnecessary, if it will produce no clearer vision. Using the eye for an eye metaphor, where it just totally fails if you're not poking out eyes that will deter future eyes from seeing things wrongly. So again, it's just as simple as recognizing that our capacity to do logic can be independent of our self-interest. We can slice it off and put it over there and be fair to the circumstance and recognize our bias towards ourself, our selfishness, and recognize it and separate our intelligence from it as best we can, create a firewall between it. And likewise, when it comes to the obvious things of our favorite team or our kids or our pet or our thing, and we're all going to sit there and say, isn't ours the most special, isn't ours the best, blah, blah, blah. And we can know that that's not the truth, just as a religious kook can understand that if they have a theory of God that's, has no structural superiority in terms of its logical continuity or its historical evidence, that they can't say it's superior just for no reason except I believe it. They can't demonstrate that superiority, and likewise, in all these other circumstances, we can see the subjective bias. And you're saying that somehow the subjective bias is all we're capable of, and that we have no capacity to do logic. And I just think that's a preposterous claim. Clearly people are able to do it when they're not self-interested. Clearly when they're an observer of a circumstance, they're capable of being logical. So what you're basically just saying is that somehow we should incorporate selfishness into perception, and I'm saying exactly the opposite. And clearly you're saying the only reason to stop harm from happening to something is because you have a self-interest, a selfish purpose, an empathy, a compassion that drives you to it. And you can be driven to it by logic alone. Again, if somebody was going to torture Adolf Hitler, I would grab their arm and say, there's no point, let it go. I would stop them, not because I have empathy for Adolf Hitler, but because I have knowledge that this will not do anything constructive, that nothing good will come of it. And that's the point. We can understand that. So, and again, I just don't see any logical argument you have made that's at all persuasive in terms of making a statement, arguing that somehow if I would not want to be in a circumstance, my arm in a bear trap, and I would do whatever I could, my brain would certainly work to get my arm out of a bear trap. Why wouldn't my brain want to get somebody else's arm out of the bear trap? It's exactly the same logical equation for my brain to analyze. The me-you part just doesn't make any goddamn fucking difference. And I know that rationally. And I'm just saying that how are you going to... You're not going to be able to defeat that fundamental and simple logic. Once you know what suffering is, once you've tasted it, and once you know that you absolutely would not want to be enduring it, you have a rational, logical mandate to do the same for every other brain that might be in distress, every other sentient that might be in distress, because there is nothing rationally you can do to distinguish one from the other. The fact that my capacity to do logic is sitting on this individual is a circumstance, is a happenstance. Okay, there's nothing special between the connection between these two things, my logic and this sentient organism, this flesh, this composition of genetic material. There's absolutely nothing connecting the understanding, the knowledge, and this biological organism. The knowledge can exist anywhere, in any thinking thing. And this thinking thing can understand that there is no difference between my pain and somebody else's pain. There's just no fucking difference. If I put them in beakers and analyze them, I will not find a distinction. And to claim that I must, that it's rational to see my pain is more important, my pain requires attention and yet somebody else's pain does not, is not rational. It's not reasonable. You can't make that a reasonable theory. Again, put them in the beaker. Show me the difference between one sentient human and another sentient human, and why my brain should see a difference. Why my brain should see those things as different things. Why should it do that? Just because it's riding, because my intellect is riding on this individual matters? Because it can hear this one scream? That's the only difference? It can feel what this one feels? That should be the only thing that should decide? That's not rational. What should decide is the merit of the thing. The child is what matters. The possession, the ownership is not important. Again, this is, you're not arguing for logic. You're arguing for this horrific, butchered philosophy of mushy psychobabble. What do I feel like doing? There, that's ethics. That's not ethics. It's nonsense. What's to my advantage? Yeah, that's the economic theory. What's to my advantage? There, that's our economic theory. A good economy? Well, let's just figure out what's to my advantage, and there's your economic theory. I mean, what? I'm sorry, but that's mockable. It's laughable for you to argue that you're somehow offering me some sort of rational counter-argument to the simple, obvious circumstance that my pain isn't any different than somebody else's pain, and that pain is the enemy. Okay? Not the enemy. The negative is in the pain sensation. The negative is not intrinsic to anything else, but it's its actuality, as an event, as it happens. And this prejudice that I should somehow think it means something, as I do when it's happening to me, that I somehow can smell the reality of the badness when it's happening to me, and somehow I can't smell the reality of the badness when it's happening to somebody else. That's a breakdown of logic, not a breakdown of the reality. That's nothing in the reality. That's something wrong with my computing device if I can't recognize that that can't possibly be true. Alright, no point in beating it to death. So, and you've conceded the rest of the logic. You've conceded that once you've established that the enemy is suffering, no matter who it's manifested in or what it's manifested in, that the rest follows quite logically. And again, you haven't offered a single rational reason why I should think meanness. The fact that my brain is connected to this body means this body should be more important to me. Where's the logic connecting those two things? Why should my logical brain think this body, the welfare of this sentient being, is superior to the other sentient beings? Why should my logic think so? And you're not going to come up with a good answer. You're not going to come up with any answer, because it's quite obviously without logical foundation. Anyway, until next time. Oh yeah, I'll put an ad on here. I did have the power went out. Yeah, 20 hours of crap. It was really just a bad day yesterday. Lots of crap. So anyway, I'll just throw on the little end video I made of just the horror and such. So until next time. And such. I guess I should have said that in the beginning of the video. Doesn't really matter. Alright. Yeah, I was in a hurricane, but man, we fucked here. The electric thing again. First, the neighbors pushed the side of their house out. So, window broken, the whole thing, mess there. And then, on top of that, there's this lovely kind of mess. Again with these trees. Right, so they trimmed all these trees. But they're all too thin. So one little wind, everything's going down. Total fucking mess. Just total mess. Yeah. Holy fuck. No internet. This is my FiOS line. Obviously, it's not going to be doing anything for a while. Yeah, Jersey Central. So, I can't even tie this up anywhere. Yeah, what a mess. I don't know what to do here. Cone. Yeah, fuck it. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Cone. What a mess. What a mess. What a mess. I gotta, just in case somebody comes through this driveway, they're just gonna tear that off. Anyway, alright, enough videoing. To work I must go. Hi-ho, hi-ho. Yeah, I can tie it up there. That's what I'll do. Okay, anyway. Till later.